if you and I are going to connect and you're a certain kind of person, then I got to relate to you. So I have to adjust my style a little bit so we communicate. That's not a problem. I just need to know who I am so I don't go through life not knowing. And so it's a matter of just when we have that kind of self-understanding, there's such greater freedom to move out of it, to connect and do ministry and mission, knowing who we are. The goal is to try to find those places in life, ministry, mission, marketplace, wherever God places us. How can I operate in an area that I care about with my passion, utilizing my gifts so I'm competent, and relating to people consistent with my style so I'm authentic, genuine. So if you don't know who you are, anything will work. But if you know who you are, you're constantly trying to say, God, how do I get more and more alignment in my life and relationships?
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. So welcome to the Chesley Lunday Experience. The purpose of this podcast is to help your church innovate in an age of disruption. But to do that, you can't continue to do what you've always done. No, you need new ideas and creative approaches to rethink and redesign the methods of the path. I'm here to help you discover those out-of-the-box aha moments so that you can apply them to your unique context. Hey, we are in the second episode of my conversation with Bruce Bugbee. Bruce is a very close friend. We've hung out for the last few years together, been working on a few projects. I love him, and I think his message for the church is more timely than ever before, which I probably said I don't know how many times. As you notice, if you're watching me on YouTube, I'm still in my garage. It's probably because I'm lazy or I'm too busy. I haven't figured that one out yet. So, hey, Bruce was raised in an unchurched family in Southern California. After attending Young Life and the Crystal Cathedral, he received Jesus at the age of 19. While growing in the Lord at Calvary Chapel, he responded to God's call to full-time ministry. Graduating from Westmont College and Fuller Seminary, he led student ministries in several churches in the West and Midwest. And after serving in the regional office of a mainline denomination, Bruce joined the staff at Willow Creek Community Church, where he was Pastoral Care Director, Internship Coordinator, and most passionately developed and led the network ministry. I am so excited to continue to deep dive into my conversation with Bruce. This episode, we actually start talking about how digital disruption has made spiritual gifts more relevant than ever before. So let's not belabor the point. Let's get into it. So obviously a lot has happened since then with Bill. That is unfortunate. But at those early days, like, it was super exciting and innovative. God was definitely using a lot of the leadership and giftedness that Bill had and the leaders that he put around him to reach a lot of people for Jesus. And so you actually had a huge part to play in that. And what did you learn about gift-based ministry as you began to lead in the Willow Creek context?
Well, even before I got to Willow, one of the things that I had seen is that when you just teach about gifts, that's helpful. People get excited. But I'm more than a spiritual gift. Yeah. And you and I could have the same gift, but totally different personalities. So from the outside, it may not even look like we have the same gift because we're expressing things very differently. So I realized personality, your temperament, how God's wired you that way, is also another unique component to giftedness, because it gives color and dimension to how you're going to express that gift. So someone could have an evangelism gift and be a roving, raving extrovert that knocks on doors and works airports. But you could also have an introverted person who likes to just have ladies over in their neighborhood and visit with them on the couch with a cup of coffee in the morning, and they're doing evangelism too. And the disservice we've done in the church is we've created all these stereotypes, Chesley, that if you're this, you got to be that. And I'm saying, who says that? Where does it say? That's not what the Bible teaches. But you have a gift, and you can have any spiritual gift. And with whatever gift you have, you can have any personal style. It doesn't matter. But your style will indicate how you may communicate and express that gift. And then there's a triad. There's a third piece to this, is that we all know that there's some things you care about more than I care about. Now, I'm not saying they're not important. So you may have this dogged passion for homeless people, and we got to reach them, and yada, yada, yada. And I kind of yawn. Whatever. Now, I'm not a bad person. It's just I don't have a passion for that kind of ministry. You do. So don't judge me that I don't, and I won't judge you that you don't have a passion for what I'm very passionate about. And we've done, again, in the church, a disservice to say, if you don't care about what I care about, you're not mature. Yeah. When you grow up and mature in Christ, you'll eventually care about what I care about. And what is a key component to who we are is knowing what it is we care about. So if you really care about children with special needs, why are you sitting on a missions committee? That doesn't make any sense. Why don't you serve in the area of children's ministries somewhere? So alignment is a key word for me. And so what I had been working with before I got to Willow was the triad of a person's passion, spiritual gifts, and personal style. These are ways we're hardwired. So my experiences, my education, my opportunities will give me all kinds of color, but those will change. My passion, gifts, and styles, in essence, don't. Those are God-given. I'm hardwired that way. So when I got to Willow Creek, it was now a matter of really systematizing this so people could continually go through. So when I started Willow Creek, there were about 6,500 people. I mean, that's a lot, even today by standards. By the time I left, there were over 15,000. Now, the ministry I was working with there called Network, and the materials published are Network as well. I can't say that the church grew because of Network and this teaching, but I can say that without Network, the growth could not have been sustained. Because at one point, 90% of the core had been through Network and the training of learning their passion, gifts, and style. Not only was it personally beneficial, but now it helps me see you differently. Now I begin to see, now I understand why Chesley's so weird. Well, you're not weird. You're different, and you have a different gift or a different style, and I can now celebrate that rather than say, ooh. And so in that, then it creates a common language as well, in and through the body. And that's power when your community has a common language.
Yeah, that's so good. So good. You got me thinking about, so the gifts, the passions, the styles, and then, the dark side of it is you have the wounds too, and that's, I think that's where people feel when your style goes rogue, and so the passion and the gifts are definitely, and the style is God ordained, but when you operate out of woundedness, it can sidetrack progress.
Well, let's face it, we've all grown up in a dysfunctional family. Right. So the degree of dysfunction can be debatable, and there are some that are far more dysfunctional than others. But our passion and our gifts and our style can be quenched. If I reach out with my left hand, I get it slapped, and I reach out and I get slapped, and I reach out. Pretty soon I learn I don't reach out with my left hand. Now, down the road, if someone asks me, are you right-handed or left-handed? What do I say? Right-handed. Because I've learned to write with my right hand. But I am left-handed. You see, and so part of the ministry of equipping is helping people uncover what they've suppressed or what they've been told isn't okay, or good Christians don't, or good Christians do. But to peel that back, to kind of say, if you could relax and be who you are and know that's going to put a smile on God's face, who would you be?
Yeah.
What would you be? But see, I mean, in my relationships, I can't always be how I want to be. If you and I are going to connect and you're a certain kind of person, then I got to relate to you. So I have to adjust my style a little bit so we communicate. That's not a problem. I just need to know who I am so I don't go through life not knowing. And so it's a matter of just when we have that kind of self-understanding, there's such greater freedom to move out of it, to connect and do ministry and mission, knowing who we are. The goal, to try to find those places in life, ministry, mission, marketplace, wherever God places us. How can I operate in an area that I care about with my passion, utilizing my gifts so I'm competent, and relating to people consistent with my style so I'm authentic, genuine. So if you don't know who you are, anything will work. But if you know who you are, you're constantly trying to say, God, how do I get more and more alignment in my life and relationships?
Yeah, that's good. That's really good. So as you're talking about that, I'm reminded of my brother and people like him, where you ask, hey, if you could do anything, what would you do? And there's so many people that say, I don't know. They give you the deer in the headlights look. But I got my brother who, for the longest time, I think he's backed up into something that he's loving. Now he's a nurse practitioner, but he thought he'd be in the military for forever. But something's happening where every time he encounters a person that can't afford medical services, like it breaks his heart, It is difficult. And then he finds the people that he's realizing, oh my gosh, this is a spiritual and emotional problem. I need you to talk to my brother that's a pastor over here. So for HIPAA reasons, he can't divulge a lot of information, but he can get my information and them and say, you probably should reach out, And what I'm finding is I think there's more like we should help people like my brother discover that and hone in on what is that really. And you've now got these skills and these abilities. You also have a gift from God that's spiritual for the good of the church. And then you have this burden and passion. But there's most people that can't even really pinpoint it. And so would you talk to somebody that's that way, that maybe even there's a leader out there that is thinking and looking at that and going, I don't actually know what that is?
That's really what I love doing most, because the teaching is helpful to give some language and understanding, and then assessments help to identify, based on that information, where you tend to most align. But then it's that coaching, it's that conversation. When you say, okay, this is what it seems to say, to be able to talk through what are some appropriate steps you might take in a direction to live that out more faithfully. Because our goal, biblical success, I think we all want to be successful, whatever that might mean, but biblically, success, I think, is best defined as being faithful, fruitful, fulfilled, and making God famous. And when we look at the biblical teaching around those concepts, it's really about better alignment with who we are. So we're at greater peace and we see greater fruit and joy in our lives. But it's that coaching piece, Chesley. It's that sitting down one-on-one, getting up close and personal to say, let's talk this through, whether it be a marketplace decision, a career field decision, a life decision. You mentioned your brother, my brother as well. He was worked for Boeing, would work for Apple and other people, but worked for Boeing in the latter part of his career. And when he went through on all of this, he just kind of teared up a little bit. He said, I wish I'd have known this 20 years ago. And for my brother to tear up, there's something going on because he's not that kind of guy. And I said, why? He said, they wanted to put me in a management track. So, I took all these management courses and we're doing all that. And he said, I don't like managing. I love figuring out solutions to problems. Give me a problem, I will solve it. And so he, for a number of years in his career, was going down a path that wasn't him. It's that typical, salesman doesn't make a good sales manager kind of principle. And he found greater freedom and joy being who he was and not equating that to some corporate ladder for success. And the freedom, because that's a word that's dear to me, freedom. Jesus didn't die to make us good. How much are we trying to be so good? God didn't die to make us good. He died to make us free. And how do we use that freedom to honor him? So to have those kind of coaching interactions, helping someone to think that through and to see the lights go on, that's what fires me up. Yeah. That just fires me up. Next, let's do it again. That's what gives me joy.
That's awesome. So let's switch gears a little bit.
Sure.
So you backed into this in the ministry, and you kind of perfected your skills, or at least honed them in student ministry in Willow Creek, and then fast forward 30 plus years, barely, and then now we're in 2021. And there's this massive disruption that's happening in the church. I think it was enabled by digital, and it was sped up by COVID. But I would consider this maybe the second major reformation of the church, if you count the first two. The first one with Martin Luther. But a lot of it hinges around this idea of the institutional church is not the church. The church is the people of God. And in that space, I believe there's a lot of organizations that are already getting disrupted because people are feeling that from a cultural level. But I think it's spiritual, probably more than anything else. I think the Holy Spirit allowed digital to come on the scene to really mess with people's paradigm and to begin to think through and think about these things that you've been talking about for a long time. And so you're probably more timely at 70 years old than even when you were my age, 35, And so what do you see is the new frontier for gifts, passion, style, and this new way of relating to the outside world and in your walk with Jesus?
Well, I appreciate that, Jesse, because there really is a disruption. I think that's a good term for the kind of chaos. And chaos isn't always negative or bad. I think there's divine chaos. I think God moves us into chaotic situations to shift us a little bit, and whether that's a full kind of paradigm shift or a reallocation or a realignment, but it's a wake-up call. And I've always kind of been enamored a little bit about God is going to have his way to accomplish his purposes. And when the Jews weren't the reaching out arm to the Gentiles, he did an end run. Mm-hmm. And when the Catholic Church, was no longer the outreach arm to the Gentiles, he did an end run. And we need to understand that, when we're not cooperating with God in his ways, he will do an end run. And I think that's kind of where we're at. I think the box church will always have a presence, but it's not going to be the main vehicle for so many people. Because, as you say, the digital has transformed things. COVID has demonstrated its reachability. And in many ways, a lot of it was exacerbated by digital and social media. And so there's so much information out there. I think what the real shift is, people used to not have information.
Right.
And so if you had the information, you were the expert. Now, everybody's got the information. What they don't have is discernment. What they don't have so often is wisdom about how you discern what is true of that information and what is not. How do you apply that appropriately and responsibly in the marketplace, in mission and ministry, in your personal lives? So what is needed today is, yes, we all need information, but that doesn't make us the unique person. You can Google anything and get your answer in a nanosecond. Right. But what people don't have is, what do I do with this? How do I test this out in community? How do I, if you will, test my reality, or what I think is my reality? And iron sharpens iron. And so we're in a, as you say, a new kind of orientation to where, as you know, I just rewrote one of my books called What You Do Best. And the reason I rewrote it, did a revision of it, is to shift it from a focus of ministry in the context of a local church to understanding who you are and doing ministry as a Christ follower in life, ministry, mission, marketplace, wherever God's leading you. And so to put that in some language that is so needed today, but hasn't been communicated. So information is out there. People don't know what is the best information and ways to meaningfully apply it in relationships. And those relationships can be digital, just as you and I have a relationship here. We have a personal one as well. But I think we can undersell the impact of even digital relationships. We do need more than that, but that can be a huge contribution. So what I'm excited about is there are more ways for people to connect, to get the understanding, get the calibration, and find alignment in their life.
Here's the reason why I think digital disruption has made spiritual gifts more relevant than ever before. It's because of decentralization. Now, decentralization came about because, I mean, it was probably already something that could have gone on, you know, in other contexts, but because of digital innovation and technology, we found a way to decentralize everything. That's what platforms were for. So there was no longer this centralized platform like a building and physical space. Now there was a decentralized platform that you could connect in community, connect with data, connect with information from anywhere across the globe. That was the big innovation that technology brought to us. And so as leaders, we are now in this space where we don't have to go to the building to be a part of your church. Well, that's a problem. If your church is built and predicated upon the principle that you need to serve in a centralized paradigm and you need to connect in a centralized paradigm. So what would that look like if you didn't have to? That's the questions we got to answer and wrestle with now, because people have left the building. Since COVID, we have lost 30, 40, 50, 60% of our congregations. Does that mean they're gone forever? Well, it depends on how you lead in this moment. So what can we do? What can we put in place to help people connect from a decentralized perspective? Well, that is what Web 2.0 was all about. It was all about social and relational connection. That's why we got social media. I don't really believe that it was information in Web 1.0 where we just slap everything on a page that actually caused disruption in the church. No, what it was now you could connect even if you didn't go to the building. You could connect online and find out how Susie and her 3 kids were. You could connect with your friend that had moved, 5 states away. You didn't have to go and be with them every day to be a part of their lives. That's what social media did for us. And the church is still operating on a Web 1.0 paradigm when they should be operating on a 2.0 paradigm. And surprise, the world has already moved on to 3.0 paradigm, which is all about immersion and presence. That's interesting, right? For those of you that believe in incarnational ministry, Web 3.0 is trying to figure out how to pull that off. But most churches would be just doing great if they got to Web 2.0. Let's start thinking about social connection without making it to a centralized platform. You have a centralized platform and it's still good. It's still useful. A building is important if you're doing things. It's not the end all be all. I love the idea that I can create my entire business and never have a physical structure other than my house. Now I still need to live, so I still need a building, right? So there's things that you could use a building for. However, I can remotely run my organization from right here at my desk. What if you could run your entire church from right here at your desk? Interesting, huh? How would you do that? Well, you gotta have a platform that's decentralized, a platform that anybody can connect to no matter where they're at. And I am not talking about exporting your event on a YouTube page, although that's maybe part of the equation for some of you. But what I'm talking about is how do you become an organization that can allow people to be just as much a part of your community, no matter where they live. And this is where spiritual gifts come in. Spiritual gifts begin to help us understand how people are wired and how Jesus has gifted them for the mission of God in their context, where they live, work, learn, or play, not while they're at your centralized platform called the building. So we have the opportunity to begin to look at how God has called and wired each and every one of our community members and build them into community builders. That is the point, because they no longer have to volunteer in nursery or hand out greeter cards or usher people to their seat. They can actually use their gifts and abilities in the outside world, in their networks of relationships that will actually cause expansion of the community, something that I know many of you hope for. The problem is we have lived in a paradigm for so long that we have built a crowd when we really need to build a community. So we begin to develop leaders. And the first step to that is character and calling. Develop their character and calling at the same time while they're on mission, not before. I know that is a novel subject because most of us go, hey, you got to know all these things. No, you don't. You need to know this and then you need to obey. You need to know this and then you need to obey. And before you know it, you become mature. And then it's not about obeying anymore. It's about being, And so we can start by helping them develop their gifts and callings that God has on their life while we're developing their character. And so do an assessment. Bruce has got an amazing assessment. Find out what every person in your church is wired for and help begin to shape them into what God would call them. And that's not by putting them into situations on purpose to say, I think you should be doing this. It's beginning to ask him, what do you love? What is your passion? Tell me, what gets you up in the morning? What do you get mad about? What is an injustice to you? What is it that happens? Like, what are you doing when you just literally come alive and you lose track of time? Those are questions. They're so important. When we find people's gifts, passions, and personal style, we can begin to plug them into the ministry that God has for them, not the ministry that we have for them. That's the new paradigm, a decentralized paradigm that says you can be everything that God has called you to be, where you live, work, learn, or play, and you don't have to come to a centralized paradigm to do so. And if you don't come, you can still be as much a part of our community as if you were in the building. This is the reality in Web 2.0. We have become a decentralized people. We are now a global ecclesia with local diasporas, instead of the old paradigm where we were local ecclesias in a global diaspora. That changes the game. Hey, if this is something that has added value to you, what we do on the Chesley Lunday experience is we like to actually have a conversation with you and help your church. And we would love to coach you for free on this podcast. And we would love to have that conversation with you. And we'd like to help solve your most pressing problem. So if that's something that interests you, would you contact us at podcast@ChesleyLunday.com. Again, that's podcast@ChesleyLunday.com. ChesleyLunday. If I was the emperor of the universe, and I'm not, because that's only Jesus, but if I was, I would create the 8th day of the week, and I'd call it Lunday. I'm just playing, kind of not, all at the same time. Hey, the best way this podcast continues to grow is by you posting a rating and review. If you think more people would enjoy listening than you, would you please rate and review on whatever platform you're listening on? Next week, next episode, we actually talk to Bruce and we begin to ask a really interesting question. And it's, what if you're not gifted for the role that you're currently in? Ooh, that's a big one, right? I'm excited about that. Take a listen to this clip.
I think also leaders need to know who they are. I can't stress that enough. It's okay to be a pastor and not have a spiritual gift of leadership. It's really okay. There are other ways to lead than with a gift of leadership. In fact, apostle, prophet, pastor, evangelist, teacher, the equipping gifts all have a leadership effect, but they're not a spiritual gift of leadership. I mean, how can a teacher teach and lead students if there isn't a class? You know?
You can beat digital disorientation, but it takes imagination to innovate. You have the spark of divine creativity that your organization needs. I know it isn't cool to feel disrupted, and that I get that. But I believe God has the answer to move you from disrupted to disruptive. All you have to do is move out in faith and try something new. Thank you for listening to the Chesley Lunday Experience.